Welcome home, neighbors.
Welcome home, neighbors.
Hello, neighbors.
We're listening from
Arizona,
Florida,
Maryland,
New York,
New Jersey,
Indianapolis,
California, Utah,
Michigan,
Iowa,
Massachusetts,
Georgia, Canada,
our home resort is
Animal Kingdom,
Polynesian,
Bay Lake Tower,
Old Key West,
Riviera,
Boardwalk,
Alani Resort,
Boulder Ridge, Copper Creek,
Grand Floridian,
Saratoga Springs,
Beach Club,
and Wilderness Lodge.
and you're listening to
and you're listening
You're listening to my
DC
Points.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the My DVC Points Community Hall. I am Peter Scheidley, and this is my first time hosting the Community Hall. I do the DVC newscast pretty much every week, but I've been on this show a few times, but this is my first time hosting, and I'm very excited to talk about the Grand Floridian because it's going on sale later this week. So we're going to be talking about what we know and what we're speculating about, and what we think of is it worth a buy? Is it worth looking into? So joining me today are also Matthew. Matt, come on down.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And we also have Sam.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here tonight. Welcome home. I am really excited to, get into this new Grand Floridian rooms and give them a test drive and talk all about them and have rampant wild speculation.
Yeah, I know. Wild speculation is what the show's all about. No. And
Yes.
Sam, you own there? Am I right?
That's right. We got into DVC because we took a trip as a family to the Grand Floridian and like two nearby resort cast studios. And then when Grand Floridian went on sale a year and a half later, it pulled us in, remembering that experience. So we were original owners at the Grand Floridian for our big family, and have loved it ever since.
That's very cool. I do not own there, but I have stayed there. What about you, Matt?
So our home resort is the Polynesian, and so I actually took a trip there in 2019. Never actually had stayed at the Polynesian. Ended up in a DVC studio, which was the curse because that was pretty well it from there. Ended up purchasing right after in the middle of the pandemic. As far as the Grand Floridian goes, I'd actually I remember saying this several times. I don't think I'd ever want to own at the Grand Floridian. We have the Polynesian. Well, then we stayed there and fell in love with it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful resort. Again, so much can be said about its history. It's technically the flagship resort. You've got, the access now, the walking path. And we've stayed there a couple times now and absolutely love it. So I'm excited to get into this subject.
Yeah, for sure. So before we do that, though, let's thank our sponsor. And our sponsor this week is the DVC Rental Store. And if you are interested in renting your points out, or if you are interested in getting more points, the DVC Rental Store is the place to go. They rent out points. They will take your points and rent them out for you. It's a great place to go if you need more points. You don't have enough to book the accommodations you want, or let's say for some reason you canceled your trip, and with COVID, I think a lot of people had their trips canceled and maybe they aren't able to use their points. And either way, the DVC Rental Store is going to take care of you. So I recommend them, and go check them out, please. dvcrentalstore.com. But anyways, let's start talking about what we know about the Grand Floridian. And I guess I'm going to start. So one thing we can say about it is that it has been in the non-new category since 2015. The original building has two types of room categories, standard and Lakeview. There are studios, deluxe studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and of course a couple of grand villas in that building. It's a little bit away from the main resort, but not too far really. And it sold out in about 2 years at the time. So it opened in like 2013 and it was sold out by 2015. The last non-new direct price that you could pay from Disney was $255 per point. And that was last May. And since they announced this addition that's coming, they have basically they took that sale down, so you could not even buy points from Disney. But what we know about this is that it is an expansion of the current Condo Association. And exactly what that means, we're going to talk about, because they haven't really talked about it. And the other thing is there are only one type of room that's going to be in this building. They are taking Big Pine Key, which is a bunch of hotel rooms, and they're converting them to what they're calling resort studios. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with the group. And they also have a bunch of variances in the studios. When you guys want to talk about that a little bit, what the differences are, because we were talking about it before the show.
So it looks like these new resort rooms are going to, well, one, you're going to have 3 view types. You're going to have the standard view, the lake view, and then actually going to have I believe it's 30 or so units are going to be theme park view. And the big differences in the actual, from the deluxe studios to the actual resort studios, is these are not going to have the Murphy beds. These are going to have 2 regular, I believe we said it was queen size beds. It looks like these are going to be much nicer, and I don't want to call it a hotel room, but that's kind of what it looks like. I mean, you've got your 2 standard beds, one of them not being the Murphy bed. It will not have the kitchenette. It's going to have a beverage station and I believe a Keurig. And then instead of having the walk-in shower and then the bathtub shower combo, you're only going to have the standard, I believe it's just a bathtub shower combo. I believe that's what we know about them as so far in terms of the differences.
Yeah, I mean, that's all true. And if you get into some of the documents they've released, so because it's officially a timeshare and Florida has all these timeshare laws, Disney has to go public with some records in advance of the sale. And they've actually put out some floor plans out there as one of these publishings. I saw it somewhere on the news, some site covering it. And that was that, yes, they're all resort studios. They're all configured just like we just said there. Some of the rooms, though, when you get into specific room numbers, given the architecture of the building that they've taken over at the Grand Floridian, some of these are like these corner kind of roundish rooms. And the actual floor layout is a little bit different for some of these. So you'll have to get into like some specific room numbers. And over time, because those rooms are the same point cost, whether it's the larger rounded corner or the balcony is across the corner all the way around balcony, I think you're going to have some preferences emerge by room number as time goes by that we'll all, as a DVC community get used to. But that's another one of the flavors, at least as far as the floor plans are concerned. The big story is, the Grand Floridian that has always existed, that wonderful, beautiful resort, DVC has taken over one additional entire building on the landscape, converted it all to these brand new room types and all of DVC called resort studios, which have these different type of bed and kitchenette-ish type things, differing from deluxe studios, but are the exact same point number per season at the Grand Floridian for the Lakeview and Standard View that already exist for the deluxe studio, right?
Yep, that's important.
So that's something,
and that's important to point out, that those studios, these resort studios, are going to be the same point price per night. The Standard and the Lake Views are going to be the theme park view rooms, and as I think Matthew said, that though there's only, I think it's less than 30, it's somewhere in the high 20s, but there's 25 to 30 of those rooms. They're very high. They're going to be the highest studios on property, which previously I think went to the Lakeview Studios at the Grand Floridian, and these are actually even higher. I think they will be very popular only because there's not many of them, but they are certainly taking a lot of points. If you look at those prices per night, you can get a 1-bedroom at a lot of resorts for less than you would be paying for those theme park view rooms. But as I said, I'm sure there are going to be people that are going to want that. They can watch the fireworks from their room, and that alone is going to make it worth it to some people for sure.
and that's all true, and it's worth maybe making a point of distinction with the the February 27th and the pre-March 2nd version of DVC Grand Floridian, and that is the current building that's DVC only since 2014, whenever they offered it. The highest room category they had was Lakeview, and when you had Lakeview, you're kind of mostly maybe you're looking a little bit towards Polynesian sometimes, or you have that island in front of you. It's not a full-on view, though. If you kind of turn your head maybe to one way or another, you can maybe see parts of Magic Kingdom and the castle. These new theme park views are going to be like literally a Bay Lake Tower equivalent of a direct full-on view of the train station beyond to the castle. So they are going to have a view like the Grand Floridian DVC has never been able to experience before. And if you thought the price of Grand Floridian Studios with Lakeview were high before, you haven't seen nothing yet.
Oh yeah,
now they're just like you just said, that they've upped the ante, and we'll see if it's worth it. I mean, I think they price it this way because they think it is. They think they probably have the best combination lake Magic Kingdom view in their whole DVC portfolio, especially with that monorail access, and they're going to charge for it.
I agree. So looking at these again, it's what's the golden rule in real estate? Location, location, location. These are not gonna be filled up. I believe that, but I go back to what Pete's saying. I mean, you look at the points per night. You're in a 1-bedroom in several places, and even knocking on the door of the 1-bedroom points at the Grand Floridian. I mean, you're within spitting distance of those, and so I think a lot of families are gonna stay in these. I think these are never not going to be filled up, but I also think you really got to look at this and go, man, DVC. They know what they have in this when they design these theme park view rooms specifically.
Yeah. And we should also mention, I mean, number one, there's 202 rooms being added, and these are all studios. And another thing to point out about it is much more central to the resort than the original DVC building. Not that the DVC building is way far away or anything, but it's a 5-minute walk or something like that to get to the main Grand Floridian lobby and all the restaurants and everything like that. This is going to be literally right next to the main lobby and right next to the main feature pool, which I forget the name of, but it's right there in the center of the resort. So that in itself, I think, is going to make it probably pretty popular, even without the kitchenette. Because I know, as someone that stays mostly in studios, the kitchenette is nice, but it's never been like, oh boy, I got a kitchenette. I can cook, toast. I mean, it's not something you use to really make meals or anything like that. So I don't know how many people are going to be turned off by that part of it. So, well, Gina's going to be turned off by it. So
I believe
she said, I'm sad. I no kitchenette.
I think kind of one of the things I was alluding to earlier is I agree with you, Pete. I think these are going to sell. I think people are going to stay in them and be very popular. I just also think it's going to really, and I mean really, ratchet up the demand for the deluxe studios at that resort that are already insanely hard to get into. I mean, there's no easy way of getting into a deluxe studio. I mean, you need to be ready on that 11th month to the day to get those studios. And I think if you look at couples or maybe smaller families with one smaller child, they're going to look at that and go, man, I'd rather have the kitchenette. I'd rather have the walk-in shower and the multiple, bathtubs and whatnot than to that. So I think it's going to increase the demand to that and the 1-bedrooms a lot.
Yeah, and on that point, and continuing with the, what do we know right now about this Grand Floridian offering? The Grand Floridian DVC offering right now is either the smallest or second smallest DVC on Walt Disney World property. So demand, right, is really there today.
Yes.
If you don't have your home advantage and you're going for if you don't have home resort advantage here, that is own a contract at the Grand Floridian, which again closed several years ago, and you're trying to get in there at Christmas anywhere, or you're in a high demand room at any other time of year, like a standard view deluxe studio, forget about it at the 7-month mark, basically. So until now, so we'll see now with all these 202 resort studios opening, that's really gonna, Disney knows this volume pressure. They know they've got pent up demand for this resort. I mean, do I know this? No, but we're speculating, right?
Yes.
That's why this is built, because they know they can sell deluxe studios or their equivalent, rough equivalent resort studios at the Grand Floridian like hotcakes, because they see these things disappear, second only to club level rooms at Animal Kingdom Lodge at the 11-month mark. So I think they have a high anticipation of quick sales on this new resort due to the demand just for the Grand Floridian in general.
Yeah, and to confirm, it's actually the second smallest resort, except the smallest is Boulder Ridge. So at least at that property, they now have at Wilderness Lodge, they also have Copper Creek. So if you take those two combined, Grand Floridian is the smallest at one resort. So,
and going back to what we know about this right now, am I correct in the current incentives for the current price per point and incentives for DVC for, I believe, Riviera and Alani, they expire on March 1st, where March 3rd, these sales will begin. So they've lined that up to where they can announce their price per point, which I don't believe to this point has been announced. So
no, and that will save for speculation. But let's see some comments from our viewers here. Jennifer says, "I am a resale only owner, but this makes me want to add on direct." It's definitely, I mean, we're going to talk about that, right? That's going to be our last topic is this worth buying? Very curious to see what they price these points at, where they were selling at in the sold out market. And that's going to come up in speculation, I think, because I'm not sure we're all going to agree. But Carol also says, "Before I added more points, I used a hot plate, slow cooker, and microwave to make huge meals for my family in the studio." We actually we have a two burner stove that we have packed in a suitcase, and we bring that with us, and we make like pancakes and things like that. I can't say we make big meals out of the studio, but we will make a little more than just a toast, as I was joking before. So Nick says, 2 resort studios, 4 real beds with more capacity than a 1-bedroom for about the same amount of points as a 1-bedroom will be amazing for some family configurations. And we do also know, I believe we know this, I think I read it somewhere, that some of the resort studios will be attached, or whatever you want to call it, will have doors in between. So you could, much like at the Poly, you can get rooms that are adjacent and connected, which you can't at the Grand Floridian. Currently, you can't get 2 studios that are connected.
Yep.
So the new studios will have 2 queen beds, which may be popular. I think so. I think there's a lot of people that would rather have real beds than even the Murphy bed. The Murphy beds are certainly better than the couches were, which the couches are pretty terrible. But I think a lot of people would still rather have a second bed.
I mean, something we should say though, as part of what we know, is that the existing current DVC rooms that are villas, the 1-bedroom, the 2-bedroom, a little bit of special clause for the 3-bedroom, but the 1 and 2 bedrooms that are out there right now in the current existing DVC are getting a makeover that we would almost call a hard refurb. I don't know if they've used that language, but they have explicitly said that those pull-out couches in today's villas at the Grand Floridian are going to be converted into they've called them pull-down beds. I don't know if they've used the language of Murphy beds, but when you look at the pictures, they are the pull down from the wall, just like the Murphy beds. So hopefully our 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom occupants at the current existing DVC villas at the Grand Floridian will be getting more comfortable bed configurations.
That's been the indication.
Along with this add-on.
And I can confirm that on our last trip in January, we stayed one night in a 1-bedroom at the Grand Floridian, and the Murphy bed or the pull-down bed was in that room. And you could tell they had done some repainting and then replaced a few of the appliances. It's very soft refurb. I think they changed a few of the like smaller furniture items, but the Murphy bed was in that room, and it's really neat.
All right. So should we get into speculation? Because speculation, I mean, all this
do it.
information is really
Yes.
good, but speculation is what's fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the One Condo Association. What does that mean for the Grand Floridian? What are we getting out of this? Sam, you wanna start since you're an owner there?
Sure. And this is speculation, but here, what that means is essentially the contract that exists today that owns the collection of owners of which own these rooms. What they're saying is kind of like how they did at Animal Kingdom Lodge when just Jumbo House was there. They're going to be adding, I say kind of, but they're going to be adding to that existing association, giving them more rooms, not doing what they did specifically at Wilderness Lodge, right? Where they had Boulder Ridge, and it was just called Wilderness Lodge, if you recall, DVC. And then when they added the Copper Creek, I believe, when they added the add-on, which was actually a whole new DVC condominium association, it was a separate contract. If you had previously owned at what is now known as Boulder Ridge, you had no room reservation rights or home ownership advantage when they added Copper Creek. Completely. Why is that? Completely different condominium associations. So we're expecting not that, because they are in the same condominium association. We're expecting a model like Animal Kingdom Lodge, where I own Animal Kingdom Lodge contracts, and even though they say Kidani on them, right, I can go to the Disney website and click on Jumbo House at 11 months in advance and book all those rooms. That's one of the implications we're expecting from this same association, which is, I would say, a pro. Now, there's some negatives, and we can talk about that, but that's one of the main pros is I, as a current Grand Floridian owner, and I've owned for the last 5 years, 6 years, I'm going to be able to get resort studios now once this comes live. And I'm going to be able to, if I want to pay insane amounts of points for a theme park view, a deluxe studio, I probably won't. I'll be able to do that, as well as all of existing owners. And by the way, vice versa. If you are listening tonight and you want to buy a new Grand Floridian contract, it's likely not going to say anything special on it. It's going to say Grand Floridian, and you're going to be able to book these resort studios plus the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and grand villas and deluxe studios that are at the previous building.
Yep. And I think from that, we can speculate that existing owners will find that it's going to become much easier to get a studio, maybe not a deluxe studio in the existing building, but overall much easier to get a studio, which is actually really hard to do at Grand Floridian if you don't do it pretty close to 11 months.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I agree. I agree that this is going to be a good thing. I always thought this would be so hard if they were going to try to split it up. I don't think it would sell the way they think it would. I think it would obviously sell. I just don't think it would sell near like it would, because now any owner at the Grand Floridian is going to have access to all the resort to the room types. Yeah, and I think this is going to be such a good thing.
So Jennifer commented here. So people that own now can book the new rooms, and new owners will be able to book the existing 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. And that is correct. Yes, Jennifer. And then Nick just commented as well. He says, assume same deed expiration as the Grand Floridian Villas 1. And I do believe they've actually come out and said that, which means that it's going to expire in 64, if I'm right, January of 64.
That sounds right.
Yes.
And yes, that would be a negative implication of this, is that normally when you buy new from Disney, you can expect 50 years of points. If you buy if you buy a Grand Floridian contract, you will have 42 years from today before it expires, not 50. So yeah, that's a downside. But I think a very big, and this is officially speculation, we're not going to totally know for sure. for sure until this is actually announced, because theoretically they could do some wiggle waggle. Are they? No. I don't. It just doesn't make sense. But a huge positive for adding on to the existing condominium association that was established in 2015 is that there won't be the same resale penalty,
Yes.
vastly likely, that they introduced with the Riviera new contracts. What is that restriction? That restriction is if you buy later, if you buy a Grand Floridian contract on the resale market, the Riviera restriction, if they did it, would say you can only use those points at the Grand Floridian and nowhere else, no other resorts.
That would in theory be if it was a different condo association, that's in theory what would happen is you would only be able to use those points at the Grand Floridian.
Correct. But we think that is not going to be the case. And frankly, that might be the trade-off Disney's making intentionally with the 8 less years on the contract. They know they're selling new points with 8 less years and the real, at an expensive resort. And maybe one of the ways they offset that is not to call this, the lakefront villas at the Grand Floridian, i.e. a new condominium association.
Yes.
No, they're calling this the Grand Floridian, just expanding it, but it's 8 less years, but you still get the same good any DVC resort you can use your points at on resale. So I think that's a very positive thing I expect to come out of
right, because they could have very easily said, hey, it's the Big Pine Key at Grand Floridian or something like that. I also think they didn't do that because they're only doing studios. They didn't want to have to sell it only on studios. So I think there was 2 reasons behind that. But I do agree. I think this is a little bit of a test. Riviera has not sold particularly well. There's probably a number of reasons for that. One of them certainly is COVID, which certainly hurt the sales. But I think that Disney may be testing here to see how the effect of having something for sale that doesn't have resale restrictions, even with a shorter contract, versus Riviera, which does have resale restrictions. How does that affect sales? Disney, I'm not going to call Riviera a flop. It's not a flop. Alani's a flop.
Yes.
The fact that 12 years later, they're still only like 60% sold. But I'm not, and that's not a comment on the resort. Alani's a beautiful resort, but from a DVC sales perspective, it has not done what they wanted it to. I think Riviera is not a flop, but it is not selling as they would expect it to, even before COVID, and now coming out of COVID, it's still not selling as quickly as they would want it to. And I think this might be a little bit of an experiment for them to see if, basically as they survey people to say, are you buying this because it's Grand Floridian, or are you buying it because there's no resale restrictions? And that will be interesting to see, or let's put it, less resale restrictions, right? I mean, you still, if you sold your Grand Floridian contract, it would still have the membership. You would still lose the membership perks, but you would still be able to stay at the other 13 of the original 14.
I'll even go, since we're speculating, I'll even go a little bit further. I think that this is 100% a test from Disney on the resale restrictions, and again with the Riviera. I believe that if Grand Floridian, this new expansion, sells like we all kind of think it will, it'll be very, very popular. It's going to sell. I actually think that Disney, you could possibly see them drop the resale restrictions from Riviera to help bolster that sales, because if you have Grand Floridian selling like crazy and they are surveying people and you're asking them, hey, is it the Grand Floridian, or is it because of the resale restrictions? Is it because of this? Well, that's going to hurt the value of the Riviera if one doesn't have these restrictions and the other one does. And I think over time, you could see Disney maybe, possibly go back and say this was a mistake and drop those restrictions to almost save the Riviera, because, that will really hurt the value of it if going forward, it's the only resort with those restrictions.
Yeah. And as a comment to the sales, the current DVC there has about 2.5 million points. It's sold out in under 2 years, and it would be I would expect something similar here, but they are roughly doubling the number of points. So the new building is going to have about 2.5 million points. So there's going to be, the resort's going to go from about 2.5 to 5 million points, which puts it up there, not on the high end, but you know, more towards the middle of most resorts. So let's see. We got Jared saying this is going to make the 1-bedroom and 2 bedrooms extremely hard to get. Glad I'm at Copper Creek and Riviera. Yeah, I don't know about, it's definitely going to make them harder to get, right? Because there's going to be people that are buying for the 1 and 2 bedrooms, but I'm not sure if it's going to be, because those are a lot of points to go to stay in those 1 bedrooms, and especially 2 bedrooms. So I don't necessarily think it'll make it so that you can't get them per se, but Jimmy says the point chart for the 1 bedroom at Grand Floridian is still pretty rich. Not sure demand will drastically change. Yeah, I said that's kind of my thinking too. I mean, it'll definitely go up. You know, when you have that many people or that many studios relative. People that buy 150 plus, they'll dip their toe in. Yeah, and the truth is, I think a lot of people mentally will be like, "Oh, I'm buying this, and it's all studios. I'm going to use it in studios. It'll just be nice that the 1 bedrooms are there, right?"
Yeah.
The resale restrictions were a big stumbling block for some buyers. The fact of the matter is, whether you believe it or not, from what I understand, like at least like half of all contracts are sold within a 10-year period at any resort. So even if you think, hey, I'm buying DVC, I'm never going to sell it, a lot of people do. A lot, you know, so that's the resale restrictions. You really got to consider that when you buy them. Now, at the moment, Riviera is still selling pretty high, but very few contracts are selling, so it's really hard to say. But let's see. Also a test to see how hotel flips are received. Well, this isn't the first one. This is not the first one. The Poly is a hotel flip, and face it, so was Copper Creek. Both of those resorts were converted because the hotel occupancy at those resorts was running at about 70%, and they realized we cannot fill these rooms, and therefore they converted them to DVC. They did that at Poly, they did that at Copper Creek, and now they're doing it for the same reason at Grand Californian. The prices at Grand California are very, very high, and they're having a hard time selling that resort. And so I think that's the reason they went for this flip. So resort rooms, not villas. Monorail resort is always going to go quick, not an apples to apples comparison. I agree. That's one tricky part about it, right? I mean, if you just look at Riviera versus Grand Floridian, which is the winner, it's probably Grand Floridian if you just looked at it a flat, you know. Golden Oak sold out, so those dollars need to go somewhere. I'm not sure that's apples to apples either. Buy where you want to stay, and don't buy for studios. Yeah, that's good. All right, so I'm going to send this one to Matt. What are they going to price this at? They have not announced it yet, and it's going on sale in a mere 5 days. Let's before we do that, Riviera and Aulani are both currently selling for $207, and with incentives, regularly. Matt, what do you think they're going to do with these points? I have my opinion, but I want to hear what you guys say.
So I don't think it's going to be anywhere near 255 a point. I've heard some really crazy, speculations. Oh, this is going to be 255, 270 a point. I don't think it's going to touch that. I think it's going to land somewhere but somewhere between 215 to 230 a point. That's my rough guesstimate. I know that's a little bit of a range there, but you got the current. I believe the current incentives are going to expire right before the new Grand Floridian goes on sale, and I would guess that they're going to price this up just a hair. And the reason for that is I believe Disney is learning a lesson here in DVC specifically. They want to leave themselves somewhere to go. They're going to price maybe the Grand Floridian a little bit higher, again, somewhere in that 215 to 230 a point. And once they get people into these meeting rooms, into these the pitch sales, they can offer them multiple options. If this isn't, if you don't think this is good, well, let me show you the Riviera, or let me show you Alani. Kind of give them options to offer people. I really kind of think that, especially if you look at what Disney is doing with some of the older resorts, Old Key West specifically right now, I think it's around the mid 180s a point. And it gives them multiple tiers, multiple options. So that my rough speculation is going to be somewhere between 215 to 230 a point.
All right, Sam?
Yeah, so I'd like all of us watching this tonight to roll back the clock to last, I think, May, when we did episode 46 of Community Hall, just when this was all announced a year ago by Disney. And we speculated then, what are they gonna do? And I'm gonna stick with what I said back then, and that was it's gonna be under. I'm speculating. I'm going on a limb, but I'll defend it a little bit. I think it's going to be 215 per point or less, because I think from a Disney DVC selling perspective, they always have their new cost per point, which is always at a fixed level. Like even right now, you pay the same amount, $207 per point at New Riviera, that you to buy new points there, as you do $207 per point for new points at 12-year-old Alani. The only difference is the amount of incentives they offer you. And I priced it out, like if you would buy 300 points, because I know they give increasing discounts. 300 points today gets you about a $5,000 savings at Alani from the 207 per point. And it gets you about $1,000 savings if you buy that same number of points from Riviera. So they're more incentivizing the older resorts, but they're keeping them at the same initial price point. So what I think is going to happen is, yes, you're going to see a bump on this week from 207 to something, but not a huge bump, because I haven't seen that in the past. I'm thinking it's 210, 212, 215, but you're not going to see a lot of benefits or discounts on the Grand Floridian. You might see them sweeten the deal. In fact, you probably will at Riviera and Alani. That's my wild speculation. And just for the record, Chad Pennycuff is not here tonight, and he predicted a year ago it'd be 220 to 225. So I want to hold him to that Price is Right wager that we have, and we'll see what happens this week on the initial price per point. Is it 215? Is it 225? Is it 250? We'll see.
So I'm the only one that's been saying this all along, and I'll admit that I have no knowledge that anybody else does. I think it's going to be 207. I think it's going to be the same as Riviera, where they just raised Riviera and Alani maybe a month and a half ago. So I think it was right around the first of the year. And I think that you're going to see them charge the same price. Now, I don't think the incentives will be the same. I think you'll get very low, if any, incentive for the Grand Floridian, but I think that you're going to see the same price. And my reasoning behind this is because even at the same price, Disney is going to make more money per point than they do for selling Riviera. Because if you think about how much it would have cost to build Riviera from the ground up per point, let's say that resort cost $250 million to build. That costs Disney like $50 per point, right, to build it. So their profit margin, or whatever you want to call it, is about $150 if they're selling it at $200 a point. How much is it costing to convert these rooms? All they're doing is they're not doing any infrastructure changes. They're too cheap to even put in a kitchenette. Because they don't want to put in a new water source. So they're doing this as cheap as they can. I'm not saying the rooms are going to be cheap looking. They're going to look nice, but they're maybe paying $5 a point, $10 a point to do this conversion. Everything's going to be profit. It's $207 a point, $200 per point of profit for Disney. And I think that's going to be enough for them.
Yep.
The other reason I'm
Yes.
saying that is they have never sold new resorts at different prices. You just said it yourself, Sam.
Yep.
Alani and Riviera are both selling at the same price, which is quite frankly ridiculous that those two resorts are at the same price. Because to pay $207 a point for Alani, even I know there's incentives there, but it's like you're already 12 years down on that resort. What are they doing? They should, you would think that they would sell that for, $170, $180 a point, but nope, same price. This is not the first time there's been multiple resorts for sale at the same time. They've always been all the same price. So that's my personal guess. Again, I don't know anything, but that's what I think is going to happen. So,
I would not be surprised by that. I would not be surprised by that at all.
So we got Jimmy saying it's going to have a base price at $255, but offers of incentives at onset similar to current Bay Lake incentives, which would be up to $48 per point for existing members. They could do that. I think again, people are speculating all over the place. Nobody knows, and it's actually a little bit of surprising that they haven't said it yet, because it is March 3rd is when this is going on sale, right? It's going on sale this week, and we still don't know the price.
So have they always done that? I would question about that. I believe with Riviera, they announced the price per point before it went on sale.
Yeah, generally, well before several weeks. Yeah. Jared says 225. 42 years might be a factor. 215 sounds right. Then you think they'll raise it for Disneyland Tower. Well, Disneyland Tower is at least a year away, so I think by then we're looking at 212, 215 or something like that. I'm sure it'll be more, but I think you're going to have again the same. I think it's going to be the same. I don't know. Do you think they'll continually call it the gem of DVC? Is forecasting a higher start price? Maybe. I'm still in the 207 camp. Millions of points to sell, and less deed and no resale restrictions cancel each other out. Team Pete. Yay, I'm not the only one. Won't be under $200 even with incentives. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that the incentives are going to be very small unless you buy a lot of points. So, I think that's all the speculation topics, right? But now the question is, are you going to buy? Are you buying direct? I myself, I'm full. Everybody gets adenitis. I got to a point where I have enough points. My opinion, this is probably one of the better direct buys to have. Grand Floridian is always going to retain its value. It's always going to retain, and especially without resale restrictions, whatever price they put on this, the year after it sells out, it's going to be $50 more.
Yes.
To buy points here. And, I think the resale prices right now for Grand Floridian are, again, because there's only resale contracts available, they're selling for like 180, 190 right now. So, you are, if there's any resort that's safe to buy in terms of not losing value, it's going to be Grand Floridian. It's going to be the Grand Floridian Resort, and certainly safer than Riviera because of the resale restrictions. But what about you guys? Do you think you're going to buy? Are you interested? Are you want to know more details? What's where you're at?
Go ahead, Sam.
Well, honestly, I'm already sold. So, Grand Floridian was our original resort, and we're a big family. So we had to buy for one of those 2 bedrooms. And the first time we went there, we're like, wow, we want to do this every year, not every other year. And so I think in the next year we added on again. And by the next year, it had already grown like by $20 per point, because like you just said, Pete, it already closed, sold out, and I was already into buy old resort pricing territory. So we love the Grand Floridian, hands down. I'm producing a set of shows for our podcast right now in the Grand Floridian. So it's not for lack of love that I won't be buying more Grand Floridian points, but we're there. We're believers. I would say for people who don't own the Grand Floridian already, who want to stay there, this is your chance to actually guarantee you can stay at the Grand Floridian rather than lucking out at the 7-month mark. So everyone stay tuned for Wednesday.
For me, it's a very simple yes. Yes, I will be joining in on the Grand Floridian. So all of our points are resale points. And as Pete, you just alluded to, if there's ever a time to buy direct, if there's ever the moment, so the stars have kind of lined up for our family. So yes, we will be buying in. We love the resort, stay there multiple times with the resale price and what we speculate to be the direct price. Well, let me say this. The only thing that would stop me from buying direct would be if they come out and announce some insane price. It is $255, $260 a point. I don't see that happening. I agree with you guys. But so barring that, yes, we will be buying direct at the Grand Floridian expansion. My only kind of quirk about it is owning 2 resorts side by side and not diversifying a little bit more. But again, Sam, I agree with you. It's kind of, you have to buy where you want to stay. I mean, and this is a resort. If you want to stay there, you got to own there more than just a night here or there. So that's it for me.
Yeah. And of all the resorts, this is the one that you have to own if you want to stay there. And, we can speculate that there are going to be so many studios. We may see more availability at the 7-month mark than you do now, but it may not even work that way. I mean, I think of all the resorts, this is the most likely resort where owners stay at home the most.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So maybe Beach Club.
And we'll see with this offering if this is something that Disney's going to explore at their other deluxe resorts of, the conversions of current regular hotel rooms. And when we missed earlier, this is what they did also at Jumbo. We mentioned Polynesian, other places they did this. Did this at Animal Kingdom Lodge as well. So is this part of their strategy for low cost room building for DVC, where the structure is already there, and let's just throw some refurb at it? We'll see. Although, to your point, Pete, I'm not sure. Disney's kind of crazy from a corporate standpoint, and the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. And literally, Paul will say to Peter, "Can I have that?" And Peter will say, "Yeah, if you pay me, the $40 million that building's worth." So it would not surprise me if DVC had to pay some real estate value to Disney hotels for Big Pine Key, whatever. But so I'm not sure it's as cheap as just the refurb, but who knows? Disney's pretty crazy with their intercompany financial shenanigans. And I think
true. That's true.
That's a lot of times as DVC folks with having to beg for park benefits, et cetera, right?
I think we all agree that this is 100% a guinea pig litmus test for DVC. The converting of the buildings, like you said, Sam, it's so much cheaper. I think Pete, you brought it up. I mean, how much profit do they stand to make as compared to Riviera, where they had to build the whole resort? I'm not saying they won't ever build another resort, but I think they have figured out this is a quick way to turn a good profit real quick. So I'm definitely in that camp.
Yep. Yeah. And again, they did, if you think about it, they did it prior to Riviera. They did it at the Poly, and they did it at the Wilderness Lodge, and then they built Riviera, and now here they go back to converting rooms. So, I wouldn't put it past them doing it. Maybe we're gonna get a yacht club next.
I was just thinking that maybe so.
yeah, yacht club. I mean, possibilities are endless.
Yeah. Yep. So let's see what other comments we have. If any of our listeners or viewers are interested. Jennifer says, would push me over the edge if Blue Card minimum went back down to 100. Oh, wouldn't that be nice, Jennifer?
Yes.
That would be great.
Yes.
So Carol says, 4 contracts and 600 points. I'm solid. No thanks, even though we love Grand Flow. Yeah, you get to a certain point where those dues come in every January and you go, that's done. West Coasters saving moolah for Disneyland Tower. Want to be neighbors, Gina? Well, I'm going to be a neighbor too, because I am definitely going to buy my first direct contract at the Disneyland Tower. So Gina says, you know it, Nick. If the price is in that $207 per point range, then I plan to buy there and get my blue card, as the resale is already close to that in price. Yep. And this is very true, especially for that resort. We are going to be purchasing more points, but not at Grand Flow. Our first purchase was there, and we want to go with another property. Yep, nothing wrong with that. We never stayed at the Grand Floridian. Is it okay? Yeah, it's okay.
It is fantastic.
It is Yeah, you will not regret it. Don't
You're
even
in
think
the
twice about
magic.
it.
You're right there. You're right in the middle of the Magic Kingdom. You feel like it's right outside your back.
Yeah, it's very nice. I'm not a super duper fan of the theming there. I've only stayed there once. My wife loves it. She loves that type of theming. I'm more of a poly Animal Kingdom Wilderness Lodge type guy than necessarily Grand Floridian kind of more elegant style, but that doesn't mean it's not amazing. It's such a great resort. I would buy in at the Yacht Club for sure if they made a DVC wing. Yeah, I think that would sell really well too. I think eventually all deluxe resorts will be DVC. Well, if you think about it, I think the Yacht Club is the only one that doesn't have one now.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
Yeah. Nick's asking, do all Pine Key rooms have balconies? The answer to that is no. Not all the rooms are going to have balconies. Some of them will have, I believe they have like that, like mini, like you can kind of open the window and look out, but it's not like an actual sit on the balcony thing.
I believe the balconies are going to be, the ones that do have balconies are going to be slightly smaller than the deluxe studios now. I could be wrong on that, but I believe when I looked at the plans, they're slightly smaller.
Yeah. Dudley says about Grand Floridian, it is awesome. The monorail can't be beat. Also, now with the walkway to Magic Kingdom, it's worth a stay. Just a crap ton of points. Yeah. Vicky says I would buy at Yacht Club. Yeah. I wonder if they'll increase the minimum to buy from 50 to, well, I think Riviera is already at a minimum of 100. I know the older resorts are still 50, but I believe if you buy at Riviera, I shouldn't say that. If you're not an existing member, I think you have to buy 100 points. If you're already an existing member, you can still buy 50. So I don't think they will, if you're an existing member, I don't think they'll change that minimum. They'll still let you add on 50 if you want. So, and that's not even a bad way to go. If you don't care about, again, getting the blue card, get 50 or 75 points at the Grand Floridian. Maybe you don't stay there every year, but maybe you stay there every other year, or, I've always thought that's a good way to go with multiple contracts, is get enough so you can go every other year at each of your home resorts. So that's certainly an option.
Yes.
But I think with that, we're going to wrap up. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about the Grand Flow? And
just excited that it's coming out, and that they're adding to this little niche kind of boutique, thing that had been DVC for so long, and giving more people access to it, I think is great. So I'm excited for what's going to happen this week.
I agree. I'm just also very excited about it. I think it's going to be a great thing. And personally, for our family, I think it's going to be awesome having that contrast between the Polynesian, our other home resort, and the Grand Floridian. Such different theming, which is one of the great things about DVC, is you can pick multiple homes like that. So I'm super excited about it.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's awesome. I really do. So, all right. Well, thanks for everybody for joining us. I do want to mention that next week's episode, we're going to be talking about something that's even more expensive than the Grand Floridian. We're going to be talking about the Halcyon Star Cruiser over at Hollywood Studios, the new Star Wars resort that opened. So I think they're going to get a couple people. Hopefully they're going to get a couple people on that have actually been there. I don't know. Gina, are we going to get some? Gina's saying yes. So that's good. We'll be having some conversations about that resort and finding out whether people think that's worth the price. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you to all the sponsors. There's the sponsors of My DVC Points podcasts. That would be the DVC Resale Market, DVC Rental, and Monera Financial. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And we'll be talking to you next week. And don't forget to listen to the newscast because I'm on there every week. And also check out, if you're a Disney Plus fan, check out the Plus Platoon, which is another podcast that we have that we talk every Tuesday, 9 p.m. about Disney Plus. So join us for that as well. And finally, check out my website, dvchelp.com. If you have any questions, if you want to see anything about resorts, a lot of details I have on there about the Disneyland resort that's going to be coming. And, we're always keeping that updated. So we'll have the new prices as soon as they come out, as will the My DVC Points website. So thanks, everybody, for listening. And bye, everybody.